Yes, I'm planting potatoes on this sunny but rather windy spring morning. I finally got around to getting potatoes in the ground. The thing that's held me back is that the ground is still very damp. Despite the fact that I've covered with black plastic for probably 6 weeks now, there's still a lot of moisture in the soil and it's only just suitable for cultivation. If I hadn't covered it with plastic, I certainly wouldn't be able to do this at all because the rest of the soil is way too wet. In the early spring here in Tasmania, we often get regular showers, sometimes spaced during the day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the type of weather. But it certainly keeps the ground quite wet. So preparing early and covering with plastic to keep it dry is the only way you can actually get to plant potatoes early. I have found in the past though that a difference of a couple of weeks at this stage in planting doesn't make a huge difference in the end cropping time. As the weather warms up, potatoes planted a little bit later come away faster and catch up anyway. Now in a potato growing area like I live, sometimes there's a bit of a question in your mind whether it's worth growing potatoes. They're very cheap to buy and there's a lot of effort that goes into planting and then harvesting potatoes. But in my mind it's an essential crop to grow. Sometimes people refer to potatoes as the humble spud, but personally I think it's anything but humble. I think in terms of a staple which we need to grow, I think, as gardeners, potatoes give us the best result for the smallest area of soil and good nutritious food. I think it's important to grow a staple because if you want to be self-reliant rather than supermarket reliant, you really need to produce this type of food. This area that I'm planting here is around about 30 square metres. There's probably 45 metres of row potatoes in here and it will produce probably about 4 months of our potato supply. When there was only 2 of us before we had children, that would have been 6 months supply, but as the children grow and their appetites increase, it becomes less and less. So in the near future I'm going to have to look at increasing the area I grow of potatoes to actually cover the whole year. In planting these, I've prepared the soil with the rotary hoe and a light fertilise. Then to put the actual rows in, I find that I have to use a shovel to dig them in. I would love to use the wheel hoe, but it just doesn't create a deep enough furrow. Getting potatoes deep into the soil, I find, is one of the keys to actually preventing green potatoes. If you have your potatoes close to the surface and don't get them covered, you can end up losing a lot of your crop to green potatoes, and that's just a total waste. So planting them deep and also get the right variety. I find that the Dutch creams which I'm growing here tend to keep their potatoes nice and deep in the soil, whereas other varieties tend to put their potatoes really close to the surface. But thankfully I will be able to use the wheel hoe in the final stage of the process of covering these potatoes, and then again when it comes to hilling. So I'd really advise grow some potatoes. Spring, I even grow a second crop in autumn. It's never as good as the spring summer crop, but it still gives me potatoes through winter.